Hi, and welcome to Creative Chelsea. Today I'd like to show you a very simple card made with one piece of white cardstock, and then I'm going to step it up into a more advanced card for avid crafters. The stamp set we'll be using is Rooted in Nature by Stampin' Up! And then we'll be using 4 different ink pads. We've got Gray Granite, the Memento Black, Pretty Peacock, and Mossy Mellow. If there are any products you'd like to purchase, there is a link in the description below. So we're going to start with this wood stamp with the Gray Granite, and this is going to be our background. And just stamp it all over. Okay, so we are done stamping the background, and now we're going to stamp some elements. We're going to start with the Mossy Mellow and the small leaf. So in the stamp set, there is a small leaf. I'll show it to you. So it comes in 2 cases, and the first case I showed you had the wood, and then the second case has this small stamp of a leaf. This we're actually just going to stamp right onto the background. We're going to do 6 stamps of leaves, and we're going to do them in clusters of 3. So there's 1 set of 3, and then I like to flip it. And we're going to just kind of stay along this horizontal line. We're going to do another set of 3 and kind of mimic the same idea. 2 on the top and then 1 on the bottom. Okay, but they're kind of opposite. So you see we have got 2 on the top here, 2 on the bottom, and then the ones. And then we're moving to the Pretty Peacock. And I love this color. It's just really bold and beautiful. Love it. Okay, and these are kind of going to be more random. We're going to add 3 in for each cluster as well, but we're not going to do exactly the same for each cluster. So this one, I'm going to put it between the 2, and then over here I'm going to just stamp 2 off to the side, like that. And then I'm going to flip it. And this one I'm actually going to do between the 2 again. And then this one I'm going to do 2 just on each side of the leaf. Like that. Okay. Alright, so we have our stamped elements for our simple card. We've got our background, our leaves, and then these branches of leaves. Now we need our sentiment or our greeting, and I really love this one that says, "Be strong, be happy, oops, be you." So we're going to get that inked up in black. Make sure it's really nice and inked up. And then this is just going to go right here in the middle. Great. Okay. And for our simple card, all of our stamping is done. So all we need to do is get a card base. So this is just your normal size card base. We've got 5.5 inches by 8.5, and it's scored at 4 1/4. Just fold along the score line. Looks like I've got some blue ink somewhere. And so this card front is 4 inches by 5 1/4, and so it should fit perfectly with a little border on that back. So let's go ahead and add that, and you can add it with dimensionals or snail. I'm going to do dimensionals just because this card is so simple. It will kind of give it a little bit of interest to be popped off the background. Okay, so there you go. A very simple card and very quick. Okay, so for our next card, we're going to add just a couple elements to this card to kind of just step it up a little bit. So I have already stamped this, so we don't have to stamp it again. Okay, so we're going back to this step. So this is before we've stamped our sentiment. And we're going to grab just a scrap piece of white cardstock, and we'll stamp this sentiment on this scrap piece of white cardstock. Oh, I felt like I moved it, so let's flip it over. Try again. There. Okay, so we'll let that dry because it looks a little bit wet. And we're going to add 2 strips of cardstock. And the first one is Mossy Meadow, and it's a 1/2 inch by 4 1/4. And the second is the Pretty Peacock, and it's a 1/4 inch by 4 1/4. And I'm just going to snip the sides. And for our stepped up card, we're just going to lay these down right over the center where these stamped images meet. So use some snail or glue dots. This green Mossy Meadow I'm just going to do straight across. Let's see, I'm going to use my grid and make sure that it is straight. And then I've got our Pretty Peacock. I'm just going to kind of do this at an angle just to provide some interest. And then we've got our braided linen trim. So this is called, yeah, braided linen trim, and I've got 16 inches of it. I'm just going to tie it along that middle point. And lately I've been using a lot of the trim and baker's twine, and so I've been doing a double knot before I tie a bow. And the way I do this is just make sure that when I'm done tying that I'm trying to go perpendicular to my line so that I get a flat bow. So you see, instead of pulling it this way, I pulled it up and down. And then when I tie my bow, I pull it parallel or in the same direction. And then it kind of will stay along that. And then I can add a glue dot or something to hold that knot down. The knot does get bigger, you know, because I've added an extra tie in there. But for me, it's just a lot easier. Okay, so I'm going to just slide that over by grabbing the front and the back and just moving it down a little bit. Okay. Alright, so let's go back to our greeting now that it's dry. And I'm just going to cut each of these out. So I'm going to speed up the video so you don't have to watch this in slow motion. I'm going to add them with the mini dimensionals, and they are a little thin still for the minis. So I'm just going to take the edge of the mini dimensional and just cut it into sections, and they're going to be about a little more than half of the size of a dimensional, and that fits a lot better on the back of this. So I'm just going to apply these 2 to each one, and then I'm going to take the tops off, so I'll speed that up. Okay, so now we're ready to add the greeting, and we're going to put it in the same place. We have just fussy cut around it so that it adds a little bit of an extra punch. So I'm going to start with this bottom one and just place it kind of at an angle between the 2 leaves. Let's see what this next one is. Be strong. We'll wait. We'll do just be happy. I'm going to put that more of an angle. And then be strong here at the top. Probably put that more, try to do more straight. There we go. Okay, so our stepped up card is finished. We're just going to add that to a base of white. And if you wanted to, you could add like a solid piece of cardstock underneath just to give it a little extra border. You can do pretty peacock or mossy mellow. But we're just going to put it right on top of this white card base. And again, I'm going to use dimensionals just to help it pop up. Since it is such a simple, it's still pretty simple card. We've just added some extra elements, but it really isn't over the top. So just kind of center it with a little border around it, and there we go. So this is our stepped up card. We've added cardstock, we have fussy cut around the greeting, and added an element with the braided linen trim. Okay, so now for our more advanced card for the avid crafters. Now this card does require an extra tool, the Big Shot, and so you will need a Big Shot, and the dies that come with this stamp set. Let's see if I can find my dies. Oh, here's the case. So it's the Nature Root Framelit dies, and here are some of them. The ones I'm using are over by my Big Shot, but they're so nice. I love the dies because they cut out the individual stamps so well. Okay. If you're going to make this advanced card, you're going to need these extra tools. So we're going to kind of go backwards, and we're just going to start with the stamped background with the wood stamp. And now we're going to add some leaves. Instead of doing all the leaves in the background, we're going to just do the ones that were on the right side. And now we need to have a bigger piece of scrap paper. And for this piece, we are going to stamp the other elements that were here. We're going to do them on this scrap page. So this doesn't actually have a die, so I'm going to need to fussy cut that. So I'll do that first, and then I'm going to take these other elements to the Big Shot and cut those out. Okay, so we've fussy cut out the wood piece. So now I'm going to take these things to the Big Shot and cut them out. Okay, so we're back from the Big Shot, and we've cut out all of our elements. And the last thing we need to do is stamp our greeting in this corner here. And we'll let that dry for a minute before we fussy cut it out. Okay, so back to our card base. So we do need another element for this card. We're going to use a piece of vellum cardstock. So 3.5 by 4 3/4. And this is just going to go over our card front like this. So one thing about vellum is when you add the adhesive, you can kind of see it. And so I'm just going to add it right here in the middle where I know I'm going to be covering it up with our other elements. So it's a little lower than half. I'm just centering it. And you can kind of see it. It kind of just makes the stamped images a little darker. Okay, so there's that. And then we're going to put this element here, and we're going to add some of our leaves around it. So just kind of place your leaves in an area where you want them. It's going to kind of be similar to what I already stamped, just so we can kind of keep that same look. And I'm just going to use snail. So one at the bottom and two up at the top. And I'm going to do the same with our element, our blue leaves. One in the middle, and then two at the bottom. Okay. Oops, I stuck to my paper. There we go. Okay, so this is going to go, kind of put it like that, right where the stamped images would have been, but just on top. So before we do that, we're going to add our strips, the same sizes as before, and I'm going to go ahead and trim the edges. We're going to add our twine, so just like it, like our stepped up card. So now this element, we're going to pop up with some dimensionals. I'm just going to put them on the top and bottom and not in the middle so that I can adjust my ribbon as I want it. Let's see, remind me how this is going. It's going like this. So my dimensionals. So here's the top and here's the bottom. Alright, so I'm putting this so that I can kind of see the little bit of the cardstock strips on the other side. I don't want to cover that up totally. We're just going to kind of put it, so I guess we're pretty close to this twine. So if I wanted to bring it out just a little bit, you grab the bottom and the top and just kind of rotate it together, and that I think gives it a little more space so it lays a little bit better. Okay, so our greeting's going to go here in the middle, and instead of separating them into 3 separate statements, we're going to keep them together so it can kind of cover up where all these elements meet. So this element is just going to go right here in the middle, and we are going to use dimensionals to help it stand out. I'll just put one big one. I'm just going to kind of put it at an angle. there is our card front. We're just going to add it to a card base. I like the white. I think that it helps the elements stand out a little bit. This time I'm just going to apply it with some snail, since there are other elements that are popped up. Okay, there we go. And there is our card for our Avid Crafter. So as we go backwards, we can see that we've got a very simple card that is still very beautiful, then our stepped up card, and our advanced card. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe, like, and share. If there are any products that you see here today that you'd like to purchase, there is a link below to my online store. Thank you for watching. Have a creative day. Bye.